It's 22 minutes past 8. Why do all comedians seem to come from the liberal left end of the political spectrum? Do right-wing comedians exist, or are they just frozen off the stages and airwaves of the comedy world? There's a new comedy night launching in London that wants to smash the apparent political consensus in the industry. It's called Comedy Unleashed, and it'll be held once a month at the Backyard Comedy Club in Bethnal Green in East London. And one of those who will be performing is the comedian Will Franken, who I think describes himself as pro-Trump and pro-Brexit. He's here in the studio, and sitting alongside him, a man who knows a bit or two about comedy and what does and doesn't work on different stages. It's Steve Punt, the host of The Now Show. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Will Franken, I mean, is it unusual that you've been booked?
Well, it can be a bit of an anomaly. What I find is that when I go into a comedian's dressing room, for example, that they talk about politics as if it's we're all in agreement. And sometimes if I'm bored, I'll say what I believe and start a fight. And because I believe comedy needs shaken up a bit, and I don't like rules, and I got into comedy because I don't like rules.
And if you were to, in a couple of lines, how would you sum up what you believe?
Freedom of choice, freedom of thought, freedom of speech. So I'm not anything that's anti-political correctness. I have to do just for fun.
But almost everybody would say that they agree with that line.
In theory, yeah, but I actually wrote an essay a couple months ago called, the gist of it was Nigel Farage and Donald Trump are actually funnier than most comedians, because the goal of satire, specifically, not comedy in general, but satire, was to subvert a power structure, which I feel both men actually did. Now, whether or not Donald Trump follows through with that is a different story. I actually think he's been compromised. But in 2016, I felt both figures, with Brexit and then Trump shortly thereafter, did what comedy is supposed to do. Going back to the Marx Brothers and, well, even before that, Jonathan Swift, just subverting power structures.
Steve, do you recognise this consensus? Because there's certainly a lot of criticism, not least in terms of what appears on Radio 4.
This is a very familiar argument, and I think it's been going for a long time. The thing is, comedy doesn't exist in isolation. It's not just a question of what comedians believe or what comedians want to say. Comedy only comes into existence with an audience. And the question really is not, are all comedians left-wing? It's why do audiences seem to respond more to comedy that comes from a liberal perspective? Now, the traditional answer to that was to do with what's known in the industry as punching up and punching down. Traditionally, it was argued that liberal left comedians usually are attacking big, powerful institutions and people that can answer back and hold genuine power. Whereas comedy from the right was sometimes attacking asylum seekers or cyclists or, groups that are not seen as powerful and can't really answer back. Now, I actually think that has changed, and I think Trump and Brexit have changed that, because one of the things Trump has done is he has talked a lot about the liberal elite, the power of the world of academia, the world of the media. And so you can now say that right-wing comedy is is punching up.
Well, can you give us an example, Will Franken, of a right-wing joke?
Well, what I do is sketches. So I can tell you a sketch that's kind of changed. It used to be a surefire hit, and I have a bit where a young lady cannot pick up her bag because it's too heavy, so she calls for a big, strong man. A big, strong man comes up, says, "I'm a big, strong man. I'll pick up your bag for you." He can't pick it up either, so he says he's transgender. So bit by bit, the voices slowly change, and all the men become women because nobody wants to pick up the bag. This used to be a very easy joke, and I think over time, because of political correctness or these unwritten rules of what can be said, what can't be said, have morphed. It's ruined a lot of my bits. So it's a selfish thing for me.
But also what people choose to laugh at is partly influenced by what people alongside them are laughing at. I mean, it's that there's an infectious nature depending which crowd you're in and the context that you're in.
I think that's a very powerful element of it. You see, when you're in an audience, it's not just a simple question of what you find funny. It's what you're prepared to be seen to find funny in public. And I think that there is a genre of humour that we all hear in private, in the pub, or when we're with our friends, that probably hasn't been represented on public stages for a while, to be honest.
Well, it will do now in Bethnal Green. So we will wish you well with that, Will Franken.
Thank you very much.
I think it's every second Tuesday of each month. Will Franken, Steve Punt, thank you.
Thank you.
27 minutes past 8.